It was New Year's Eve. We were getting ready to go home to host a New Year's Eve party, and somebody ran a red light and hit us. I remember kind of like waking up and not knowing what was going on.
And I can't hide, 'cause growing pains are keeping me up at night.
Hi everyone, welcome back to this week's episode on Take a Pain Check. I'm so excited to talk to Delane today. Hi Delane, can you give me a brief introduction about yourself? Tell me a little bit about your education, your hobbies, your career, and what you've been up to recently.
Sounds good. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Natasha, for having me on the Take a Pain Check podcast. Very excited to be here today. So I guess I'm currently in my second year of my PhD at the University of Guelph in the Clinical Child and Adolescent Psychology program. So I got my master's from the same program, and now like I said, I'm in my PhD. What do I love to do? I love doing jigsaw puzzles. I'm a big jigsaw puzzle person. I love watching a good documentary or listening to live music. I really like exercising as well. And what have I been up to? I've been busy with school and yeah.
I'm also busy with school, so I think that's just us students being busy with school. Can you start off by telling me a little bit about your story and the story behind your chronic pain?
Yeah, for sure. I guess it's about 15 years ago. My family and I were in a car accident. It was New Year's Eve. We were getting ready to go home to host a New Year's Eve party, and somebody ran a red light and hit us. And I'll never forget this. I remember kind of like waking up and not knowing what was going on. Um, I was really disoriented. I could hear my sister screaming. I just didn't know what was going on, and it seemed like I had hit my head on the window, and was unconscious for a little bit. And so, you know, ever since then, I've lived with chronic pain, and also my family has lived with chronic pain. So there's my mom, my dad, and then my sister, and we all live with chronic pain. And so pretty quickly after the car accident. I had whiplash and that pain didn't go away. And then it eventually turned into chronic pain and primarily myofascial pain. So, really focusing on the fascia, which is like connective tissue that kind of holds all of our organs and our bones and muscles together, and then on the muscles. So, I usually find that it's my muscles that get really sore and kind of focus in my neck, back, and shoulders. But yeah, I guess kind of as my life has gone on and I've lived with chronic pain, it started affecting my body in different ways. So I now have two herniated discs in my back, which also like impinge to like pinch a nerve. So now I have like pain that shoots down my leg. And then I'm kind of like chuckling because it seems so silly to me now. But during the time, it was my last exam season of my undergraduate degree, and I was like applying to get into clinical programs. And so I was working really hard and I wrote so many notes that I actually got tendinopathy in my wrist. Like I just wouldn't, it was silly. I should have stopped writing and I should have been way better at pacing. Looking back now, I do regret that a bit, but ever since then, I've had chronic wrist pain. So things have just kind of happened over the past 15 years that have led to pain in different parts of my body.
Wow, that's a lot. Especially for someone who's very young, and just to go through that, it must have been really hard. And I mean, you also had your family going through that with you as well. So I'm wondering, how was that social support, I guess, or family support that you received? Did you find it to be helpful? How did it work in terms of the environment around you?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And I think that, you know, when I explain it to people, it's kind of interesting, right? Because specifically with my family, you know, it, for a lack of better words, sucked because my family was living with chronic pain. I was living with chronic pain. But then it was the positive part of it was that we were all living with chronic pain. So we all kind of knew what each other was going through, which I think honestly, my family's very supportive. And, even if they didn't have chronic pain, I could still imagine that they would have been really supportive. But just to actually understand what somebody else is going through is just um, helpful on a whole other level. So I think that was just a really nice thing. But then at the same time, of course, since chronic pain affects you in so many different ways, there were also times when, my mom or my dad was having a really bad pain day. And so, they might have not been able to help me as much as they might have wanted to. And again, not their fault, but just because of their pain. So, it did affect me in ways like that as well. But I think overall, again, it's unfortunate, but I'm really grateful that I had people in my immediate family who understood and knew what I was going through.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. When you had the accident and then you obviously recovered over time, how did the recovery work for you and your family?
Yeah, so honestly, it was, I would say that there wasn't ever really a recovery process just because like we all still live with pain. And even though we got physiotherapy and we did all of the things that we could have done after the accident to help us heal, we all just kind of ended up with chronic pain. And I mean, um it's yeah, it's kind of tricky to answer like how the recovery process went because we all ended up, yeah, with chronic pain. And so that brought on a whole other new set of challenges that within like that time right after the accident, we were hoping, we would never have to keep living with that pain.
What about physio or like OT or anything like that? Because I know a lot of people also see like chronic pain specialists as well. Did you have to go through any of that?
Yeah, so pretty much right after the accident, we started going to physiotherapy. Um, I'll talk about my experiences, even though I knew what my family went and did. I'll just speak about mine since I can talk about them more um, specifically. But so I did physiotherapy. I was going what felt like almost every day. I think I went every 3 or 4 days. So like maybe a couple times a week at the start. And it was pretty intensive. I was also doing massage and I didn't do any like OT or occupational therapy or anything like that. I was really kind of just focused on the physio. And then, as kind of the 3 month for chronic pain passed and I still wasn't getting any better, and if anything, was getting worse. I continued with physio, and then I got on a wait list for the pediatric chronic pain program in Edmonton, which is where I lived at the time.
Since you moved from Edmonton to now Ontario,
Mhm.
how did the healthcare system change in that sense, or even how did you get the support that you needed just because you don't live with your family now and you live with your significant other, but how did that work?
That's a really good question, and it's honestly something that when I decided to move for grad school, I didn't even like realize would be such a task. So I kind of transitioned, and I also moved here during COVID, I might add, which is added another layer of difficulty. But so as soon as I got here, I made sure to find a family doctor really quickly, and luckily, I am able to get a family doctor through the Student Healthcare Center at the university. So um, that was really helpful. And then immediately she put in a referral for a chronic pain clinic. I actually had to kind of do my own research with that um, because, it took some time to get in to see her the first time. But I felt really fortunate because at that point I knew people with chronic pain who lived in and around the GTA, so the Greater Toronto area. And somebody had told me about TAPME, which is the Toronto Academic Medical Pain Institute, I think. That's what it stands for. And essentially, it's like a referral pathway. So they can, if your doctor refers you, they're it's a faster way to get into a pain clinic or just get pain services in the GTA. And so I did that, and it was interesting because it was during COVID, so everything was online. But then when things started to transition kind of out of COVID, they wanted me to come to in-person appointments, which was all the way in Toronto, and I live in Guelph now. And so that made it difficult because that's like a long way to drive. It can take like up to 2 hours if there's traffic. So that wasn't going to work for me. So then I went on another wait list for the McMaster Adult Pain Clinic, which I had known about just previously. And I waited, gosh, I want to say about 2.5 years on that wait list, but then it took like another 6 months, so in total about 3 years to actually get my first appointment um, at that clinic. So that's where I am now.
I think a big part of living with pain is that it's so invisible and people can't really see it. And so while you were growing up and even now to this day, have you had any comments of, oh, you don't look like you have pain or you don't look sick enough or anything like that? And how has that kind of affected you if you've had any of those comments?
I'm taking a deep breath because those are like, as I'm sure you might
Oh
also know,
yeah.
those are the comments that you have to take a deep breath because they're very frustrating. And, still they frustrate me, and I just have to really try my best to keep keep composed because it can be really frustrating. And oh my gosh, like I got the, oh, you're too young to be in pain, or like you can't have pain, like you're a kid all the time. And it was so frustrating because like you don't understand what's going on in my body. You can't see that like inside I feel like there's like a fire, like I'm on fire all the time. Like you don't see that, but like it is happening. And then of course it makes you feel like you're not believed and all of those sorts of things. And I mean, like you said, with chronic pain being invisible, to this day, right? I still get comments about, oh, like you look fine, or oh, you were able to go to class like this day and you were fine. But then what people don't see is, me laying on the couch at the end of the day, like covered in heating pads, or all the pacing I have to do throughout the day, or, sometimes like it doesn't happen and knock on wood, but it hasn't happened in a while. But like some mornings, like it's difficult to get dressed. Like I just can't bend down, or I can't bend over to like pull up my socks and stuff like that. So that's what people don't see. And so it can be really frustrating. And even sometimes to explain, it just kind of feels like you're talking into a deep, dark hole that your words are just kind of going into, and they're not actually um, people aren't listening.
Yeah, I feel the exact same way. And I think also a lot of people on the podcast, guests, patients that I've just engaged with, feel the exact same way, as in, just because you can't see it doesn't mean someone's not experiencing it. And it's also always just people constantly invalidating people's feelings or emotions or even their own pain, which is very hard to kind of get through. And it sucks that it's still to this day a thing. It shouldn't be. I think we're
Oh,
trying to raise awareness about it, do this research, do advocacy and awareness things, and it's still a constant issue of, oh, you don't look sick enough, you don't look like you're in pain, which I don't
yeah.
think, well, I also don't think it's any of their business,
Well,
but
yes. So 100%, right? Like it's none of your business. I shouldn't have to explain it to you. I shouldn't have to, feel like I have to tell you my life story. And there's always a part of me that gets frustrated, right? And then there's always a part of me, like you said, that's like, oh, this is my moment. I can like provide education, or I can provide awareness to people. And I think that's a big, I mean, it can be looked at in different ways. It can, it's a positive thing, but it can also be really burdensome to be able, or like to have to do that. And I know people don't have to do it, but like you said, it's important to increase awareness and increase research. And so I feel like it's a job that I take on to like educate people because it is important that more people understand. And I think it's slowly starting to grow, you know, with um, more organizations and like government taking notice of pain and chronic pain in Canada and like the world more generally. But we still have a long way to go, and it's just about, yeah, keep doing the work that we're doing and getting the word out.
When you live with arthritis in particular, and I think a lot of other conditions, you end up transitioning care. And so I'm wondering if that's the same for chronic pain. Did you transition from pediatric to adult care? And if so, what was that difference?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, um, again, I can speak from my experience. Like arthritis, I'm sure it's different, you know, for each person. And I think it's definitely different for each person living with chronic pain. And so, especially because there can be so many different types of chronic pain, right? Like you have people who have chronic abdominal pain. And so then you have like gastrointestinal um, care providers involved and like headaches, and then you have neurology, right? So like there's lots of different types. For me personally, I I was in a pediatric chronic pain program at the Stollery Children's Hospital up until the age of 18. And then I feel quite lucky, and this isn't the case for most, and I know that because of talking to people. But my transition went really smoothly, and that was because the clinical psychologist I had in the pediatric chronic pain program was also a psychologist in the adult pain program at the University of Alberta, which is kind of like the main hospital, and then the Stollery Children's Hospital is within that. So um, my transition in Edmonton was really quite simple because I just kept seeing my psychologist. And at that point, that was what I needed. I had, like, I was doing physio in the community, and I wasn't seeing like a physician regularly because I wasn't on any medication. So I just still needed the support of a psychologist, which was a fairly easy transition since they worked in both programs. But then like the bigger transition was what we had kind of already talked about when I switched provinces, which meant that I had to find a whole new pain program, and which meant I had to learn a whole new healthcare system, and like a new place as well. You know, I went from living in a really urban location in Edmonton to living in Guelph, which it's still a city, but it's a lot smaller. And, you know, there isn't like a pain clinic in Guelph. So, you know, I have to travel to Hamilton, which is about 45 minutes away every time I want to go to the pain clinic. So, it's those sorts of things that I found a little bit more difficult.
Living with chronic pain, you do have to figure out pain management strategies. So, what are some pain management strategies that you've implemented in your life? And was that always the case? Who taught you pain management? Was that yourself, your doctor, someone else, your family? And then I also want to talk about medications, which we can talk about in a bit. But I'm wondering, how did the pain management work for you?
It's interesting, right? Because some people are have like healthcare providers that they can speak to, whether it be a family doctor, whether it be within a pain clinic. Um, so it was about 2 years from, you know, being diagnosed with chronic pain to actually getting in the chronic pain clinic. And so for those 2 years, like it was rough. Like it was really rough. I didn't have any really like pain strategies, like pain management strategies, because um, it was just like my family doctor. And I think they gave me, like, I was on some medication, but it wasn't really helping. And, you know, it was just really tough, to be honest. Like, there wasn't any pain management strategy. So all the pain management strategies I learned were from the pediatric chronic pain program, which I got in, and I did this class called Pain 101, which is really a it's a cognitive behavioral course, which is really just means that it focuses on how we can think differently and how we can like act differently in terms of managing our pain. And so honestly, that class taught me everything I know about pain management, and I don't like I owe my life to it. Like it really changed my life, learning all of the different pain management strategies. Um, Pacing was something I learned about in that class, and that is like my go-to pain management strategy because it's both like preventative and more of a reactive like pain strategy I can use. And so pacing is something that I have and continue to use because if I don't take breaks and I don't kind of switch things up, um, that's when I can get a pain flare. Um, just like really focusing on relaxation techniques as well. Like deep breathing has always been something that really helps me to kind of reset my nervous system and can get me kind of feeling better enough to do what I need to do or what I'd like to do. Um, and honestly, exercise is something that I learned more as an adult. And I know that, I did all my physio stretches and my exercises, but truly just like exercising has really, really helped my pain. And that was something that I actually learned about during COVID when the world was turned upside down and I couldn't go for massages. I couldn't go for acupuncture. I couldn't go for all of the typical things that I would go to. And so I started exercising and it actually really helps my pain. And even like I was in the middle of a pain flare. It kind of started on like Saturday, Sunday, and um, I wasn't able to go to the gym on those days, but I finally got back to the gym on Monday and Tuesday, and like I've noticed a difference. Like it's really calmed down my pain in those last 2 days since I've been able to go to the gym, and that's a pattern that I always see. Like I always like myself and my partner will always kind of like push me like, oh, I know you might not want to go to the gym, but it'll help. And so even if I go and I walk on the treadmill or just like go on the elliptical for like even 10 minutes, it's just some movement. It's better than,
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, what do you do at the gym?
yeah. So it's changed as I've you know, progressed in my pain journey. I find that I really like Pilates because it's really like it can be low impact, which is really helpful. And like you can use like light weights, but it's still like strength training, and it also really targets your core, which for back problems is really helpful. And I found that it's been really, really helpful for me. And I also really like going on the elliptical. I find that I can't run outside or on a treadmill because like the impact is like really bad on my back. So the elliptical kind of takes that weight off of my lower back, and I find that it really gets like my arms moving and my legs moving, and it's also nice because it also kind of gives me some time to like watch a show or something and just kind of disconnect from school or like whatever might be going on.
Yeah, I've recently started. I mean, I literally in every single podcast episode I've had, I've always been like, I don't go to the gym. I don't exercise. But about that, things have changed now. I don't know, my sister wanted to do a challenge, so she makes my, well, not makes, I can't, well, it was at first she was kind of forcing me to do it with her. But it means I have to exercise for at least 45 minutes every single day. So and this is coming from someone who's never really wanted to exercise or exercised before. So I started on Jan 15th. I don't know if it's helping my pain. I have no idea. Like I haven't thought of it that way. Maybe it is, I just don't know.
Yeah,
But I
it's
don't know.
hard.
I know a lot of people say that like exercise helps their arthritis or their pain. I don't know if it's helping me. I'm just doing it because I think I need to move. And I usually just don't move, and I know that movement is good, but hopefully it helps my pain.
Yeah, and I think one thing that at least I noticed, and with the people I've talked to with pain that have like started exercising, is I feel like it takes a bit for your body to get used to it. Especially like I find that if like I go on vacation and I'm not working out or I just stop working out for some reason for like a week or something, when I get back to it's almost like this hump that I have to get over. And like my muscles are sore, like a lot more sore than would typically be from like people
Oh.
going to the gym. And then like it kind of like puts me out for a couple of days. But then, the more I like keep going, then it like gets a little bit easier. And um, yeah, but it is tricky. Like it's hard to go to the gym and like I don't know, I find that everybody's a little bit different, but I tried doing YouTube videos for the longest time and like I just could not do them. Like I would always kind of not do everything to like the fullest extent, or um I would like stop early and I just needed some accountability. So I found that going to the gym, like it just there's people around you, like it's just kind of it works better for me than me sitting in my living room trying to do something and not actually being able to finish it.
Yeah, no, I feel the exact same way. So the way that I do is because I live in an apartment, so I have a gym downstairs, and there's a few YouTube videos that I would still do, but it would just be like max 10 minutes. So there's this person who has like 5 minute like arm and back workout or something like that, and then I would do that. But I just don't like doing it in my apartment. So I would go downstairs, go to the treadmill, like elliptical, all those things, and then put my phone there and make sure I do it there. So but that way I don't like come back upstairs or stay upstairs and go quickly, and you know what I mean? So that's just the alternative that I found. I still prefer group things or doing things together with other people, which motivates me. It's just that I think one step at a time for me.
And that's the thing, right? You just have to figure out what works for you. And um yeah, I definitely can see what you mean about just like getting somewhere else, because I feel like that's the same even for school, like for everybody. Like I never had to do it because I lived at home during university, but for people who lived in residency, like studying in their room or on their bed was just like never worked for people. So like going to the library and like in this case, going to the gym actually kind of gets you up and gives you more motivation.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk a little bit about medication. Do you use any medication for your chronic pain? Like, does the specialist or physician give you something like that, or just tells you to manage it?
Yeah, so I don't take any medication right now. I did when I was younger, um, but I stopped it because it wasn't really like doing much for me towards like I'd say 17 or 18. And then I just kind of use more of those like psychological and like exercise and like physical strategies versus medication at the moment.
Okay, and then you are also heavily involved in research and academia, and you went to university and I guess school before then. Did you ever have any accommodations because of your pain?
So this is actually a really like important thing that I like to share, because I didn't have accommodations in my undergrad, probably when I needed them the most.
Yeah.
And it wasn't because there wasn't any. It wasn't, and I never can quite put my finger on the reason. I feel like it kind of had to do with my pride a little bit, because I was still, you know, learning how to be a young adult with chronic pain, and like that whole transition into adulthood is a whole thing, and making your own decisions and all of those sorts of things, whereas like when you're a kid, lots of things are put in place for you and it's just easier. And so I just was, I think, more in the headspace of like, oh, I'll just like try and get stuff done, and I'll just try my best and I'll do things at home. Like, but looking back, I really regret that. And I wish I would have got accommodations right off the bat, because I knew I needed them. I would be, staying up late to finish assignments because I'd have to take way more breaks. Or, if I was having a pain flare, I'd be sitting there like in my office or at the table, like just covered in heating pads, or like I came up with the most ridiculous things. Like I found one time these glasses that I don't know if I'll do it justice, like explaining them, but like you can look down without turning your head, which like my neck pain hurts if I like stare down for too long. So I was able to like look forward without um like looking down. And so like I got those. And so there were just like so many things I got like before standing desks were like a really big thing. I actually ended up buying a like one of those movable trays that like you see at hospitals that like tilt and stuff. And like I would study off of that so I could stand up. Or like I would like put boxes on. So like there were just so many things that I did that I was like, oh, I could have like gotten help with this, or I could have gotten extensions and
Yeah.
time. But the first thing I did when I went to grad school was I reached out to Student Accessibility Services and met with an advisor and got accommodations. And that's been really helpful. Also, like my program is quite small, and my supervisors and professors and my peers and cohort are so supportive that people are just quite understanding. And I know that always isn't the case, but I feel really lucky in that sense. But like I said, the first thing I did was register with SAS.
That is so good because you need it. And for me, as soon as I got my diagnosis, I got accommodations. And I think it's different for a lot of people. I've heard lots of different stories of people coming on the podcast and saying either one, they never got it because they didn't know the process and they didn't know what that meant for them and how to do it. It just seemed like a lot of work. So why would they do that? And then the other thing is, oh, shame and sort of the pride aspect of it. And then other people that just got it like me because I don't know. I don't even remember how the process happened. I think I have no idea actually. Like that's something I should ask my parents because maybe then I could talk about it. I have no idea on how I got accommodations right when I was diagnosed, but then in high school and then university you kind of do it yourself.
Mhm.
But I think in high school my parents were still involved in the picture of like everything.
I'm trying to think too. I think it must have been my like doctor or psychologist from the pain clinic wrote a letter to my school, and then that's how like that happened, because I definitely had accommodations in like in Alberta it's called junior high, so like grade 7, 8, 9, and then in high school I definitely had accommodations, but in my undergraduate degree I didn't. And again, yeah, maybe it's just like that first independent like thing that you have to do, not maybe first, but one of the first or things like that. But I think a big piece was like I just wanted to try to tough it out on my own and like, yeah.
But I think we don't realize is that we are at a disadvantage compared to other students, and so we should get the basic rights that we deserve in order to like thrive in school. And I think a lot of us don't think of it that way. And I've been thinking of it that way. Everyone's able to handwrite, and I struggle to handwrite. So getting a scribe is honestly much harder, but it is something that I will need in order to do math tests or whatever. So I might as well get the help because then I could still be somewhat successful. Yes, it may be a bit harder. You learn more over time, and it sounds like that's exactly what you did. You learned over time. You kind of realize, okay, I actually do need this.
Exactly. Like I feel I was talking with somebody else who lives with pain not too long ago, and we were talking about how living with chronic pain, you're just constantly learning. You're learning about your own body, you're learning about different ways that you can do things, and you're learning by reflecting on like how you've done things in the past that maybe you didn't, you shouldn't have done, or maybe you should have done something differently. And it's just always such a learning process. And I mean, I don't think it's ever going to finish, just as things change.
How did you tell people that you had pain, and how do you describe pain to others?
Yeah, so I feel like this changed throughout my life. And I think for me, it also changed with my own acceptance of my pain. So like when I was like right off the bat, when I was 12 and I was like in the car accident and I had pain, I was diagnosed with pain, sorry. I didn't really tell people about it. Um, I was just missing lots of school and people were asking me why, and I was just like, oh, I'm sick. And I wasn't really telling people about it. I think just because it was really hard to explain, and it was just another medical thing that I had because I've grown up with lots of chronic illnesses, chronic pain just being one of them. And so, people were kind of always used to me kind of being out of school quite often. And so I just attributed it to that. But then, you know, I would say through most of my adolescent life, I would only tell people who I was really close to or like closer friends. Um, but then as I started to become more accepting of my pain and grew out of that frustration and anger that I had towards my pain when I was really young, I was able to own it more and share it more. And so, looking at me today versus who I was at the beginning, like I share quite a bit about my pain now because, again, I think it's important that people learn about chronic pain. And, my story is just one story, and it might be the first time that somebody hears about chronic pain. And I think, that's just a way to grow that awareness. And then how do I tell people about my pain? Again, I think that's changed. I think at the very beginning, I would just probably say something quite basic, like, oh, my back hurts, or like I have a headache, or that sort of thing. To now, I've lived with pain for a long time, and so I kind of describe it as like I have a normal level of pain where I always have pain, it's always there, it doesn't go away. Um, it's usually manageable, even though it's still there, but then sometimes I'll have pain flares, and so sometimes it'll get really bad. And then I just try and, answer people's questions as best as I can and that sort of thing. But like I said, I feel like it's definitely changed as I've gone on my own pain journey.
I think that happens over time for a lot of people, that it changes and it's not always the same. And I think as you go through more life experiences, then you definitely get a new perspective on things and then also experience different situations with the condition you're in. And I think that gives you more of a purpose on, okay, I do need to raise awareness and advocate because these are things that are happening that are not okay. And if more people know about it, it can make such a big difference, not only to your life, but like the future generation of people with pain. So honestly, like everything that you're doing now is amazing and you're kind of focusing a lot of your work, and we're going to talk about it next actually, like you're focusing a lot of what you're doing on now your research and then being part of other groups to kind of continue that raising awareness and advocacy work. So can you discuss your research in general? I know you are very passionate about research, so.
Yes, I am. So in general, my research focuses on pediatric pain. And then specifically, I am really interested in peer support for youth with pain. And so this really stemmed from my own experiences of not having anybody to talk to when I was a teen and having, my family understood, but, you know, there are like other people in your life that you wish understood. And a lot of times when you're a teen, the important people in your life are your friends. And so, I didn't have anybody who had chronic pain that I knew. And so it was really frustrating and difficult because nobody understood. Like people always asked me questions that, it almost seemed like I talked about before, like you were just kind of explaining into this deep, dark hole that like nobody really took it to heart or like understood or even sometimes believed, right? And so that's why my research is focusing on developing a group peer support intervention so that, you know, we can hopefully help adolescents with chronic pain and eventually down the line I hope to expand it to kids with chronic pain as well, but right now I'm focusing on adolescents, but I just can hope that one day youth with chronic pain can understand that they're not alone and they have other people that they can talk to that understand, who also live with chronic pain.
Oh, that's amazing. And I think what you're doing is so important for people living with pain because I think a big thing that maybe even both of us have experienced is that like isolation. You did have your family around you, but it's still like having someone your age that lives with the same condition as you, going through the same experiences. That's so important to talk to them because they get it. And not everyone gets gets that. And also, I think compared to what your parents are going through versus what you're going through is completely different because you're at two different stages of your life.
Absolutely, right? Like being being a teenager is hard enough. Okay. Like, I feel like we've all been there. Like, we've all gone through, like, going to school, like, starting puberty, like, starting to date, like, friendships, all that. Like, that's hard. Right. And then imagine having chronic pain on top of that. Right. So it's just this really, like important part and stage of your life where there's just so many things going on. And especially like it's a time of your life, it's a time in your life where friendships are really one of the main things that is important. And so that's why I think it's such an important part to target because, actually in my master's research, I was speaking with adolescents with chronic pain and, you know, even looking at other research and speaking with other people who live with pain, you know, their peers without pain just don't get it. And they're really lacking, like adolescents with chronic pain are really lacking this social support from their peers without pain. So that's where peer support could come in with other adolescents with chronic pain and help them to feel more supported and help them to feel like they're not alone.
You are also a founding member of the Putting the Pieces Together conference, a conference for and kind of by people living with pain. Can you discuss what this conference is? I know what it is, but just for anyone else who doesn't know, and what was the inspiration behind this project?
Yeah, so this is one of the most amazing things that I've been a part of. Like you said, it's a conference for and by people living with pain. And, it really came from, and the inspiration for it was that there's lots of conferences out there, right, that focus more on academics or like medicine. And, sometimes people with lived experience are invited to those and attend them. But they're not really focused on topics or things that are important to people living with pain. So, really, what we wanted to do at this conference is to have, listen to people living with pain and hear what they want to hear about. And so then, that's when we select different topics and different talks. On those sorts of topics that people with chronic pain want to hear. And it's also an opportunity for people with chronic pain to come together and to meet each other and to learn from each other. And so really it's just this place to go for people living with pain.
Honestly, that's so amazing, and I think if we had that a long time ago, or a lot of more people knew about it, it makes such a big difference in people's lives, like being able to attend something like that. And
Yeah.
it's also virtual. So,
It's virtual. It happens during National Pain Awareness Week every year. So this will be our third year. So it happens in November during National Pain Awareness Week, like I said, and it's virtual. It's free. That's a big thing that we really pushed for. And yeah, I think just as somebody who's helping to like plan the conference, but so I know a lot of the things that are happening, but then actually just going to a lot of these talks that are often by people living with chronic pain. It's just so incredible. And I always leave that week just feeling so my heart is so full. I'm so just overwhelmed by the stories that people share and by the things that I learn. And it's so incredible. And I know I might be a little bit biased because I'm on the steering committee, but it's truly it's a really amazing time.
I usually like to end off the podcast episode with an advice segment. So, what are some daily tips that you have for people living with chronic pain that you personally use or you've heard other people use?
Yeah. Okay. So I think two come to mind. The first one, I've talked about it a couple of times during this podcast. So hopefully people know how much I love it, and I think I've heard other people who love it as well. Is just pacing. I think it's so important making sure you're either planning in breaks or you're just taking breaks. I find that makes a huge difference in limiting pain flares and also just contributing to my well-being and overall quality of life. And then I think the other thing is, it's not necessarily a daily tip, but it might be, because I think the other thing that I would say is try to find other people who live with chronic pain. And I know that can be hard, but there are some really amazing organizations, specifically in Canada, that I can speak to. I'm sure there's other ones in different areas of the world, but there's the People in Pain Network from Pippin. And then there's, if you live in Pain BC, they have a wonderful peer support groups. And that's actually something that Pain Canada is working on currently, is putting together more peer support. And then I'm working on group peer support for pediatric pain. So just finding people to talk to that understand, because it goes a really long way. Yeah.
Awesome. And I'm wondering if you have anything sort of exciting that's coming up in terms of your research.
Yeah, so actually, right now, I am starting my first dissertation study. And so my dissertation really focuses on developing this group peer support intervention, and we're going to pilot it. So the first study I'm actually recruiting for right now. And so we're looking for adolescents who live with chronic pain, caregivers of adolescents who live with chronic pain, and then also healthcare professionals who provide care for adolescents with chronic pain. And we're looking to hear what these groups think about two interventions that we've developed. So one virtual and one in-person group peer support intervention. And so if you are interested in hearing more about that, you can contact me. I believe that Natasha will include my contact information somewhere in this podcast link. So please reach out, and it's never too late. I'm probably going to have studies going on for my dissertation for the next couple of years. So even if you missed this one, there might be another one that you can participate in.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Delane, for joining me today on this week's podcast episode. We started off by talking about your story behind chronic pain, the pain that you currently face today, and the therapies and alternative pain strategies that you use to kind of manage your pain on a day-to-day basis. We talked a little bit about what it was like